In a world obsessed with efficiency, have we become too vulnerable to the unexpected? We build faster machines, quicker delivery routes, and maximize our daily productivity. But what happens when there is an unexpected event? Like a part of the machine breaks, or a volcano eruption stops all the delivery, or we experience a personal accident. Well, in many cases, it means a collapse of our over-optimized systems, which drives productivity or efficiency to zero. A solution could be to inject redundancy into our systems. Redundancy is basically a buffer that we create by including extra resources in our systems that are not necessary for normal operation. We can see redundancies in different contexts. Engineering talks about backup systems to continue operation even if a component fails. Businesses have extra employees to ensure normal operation in case many people are sick. Nature also does it. Nassim Taleb on exactly this. Nature likes to overinsure itself. Layers of redundancy are the central risk management property of natural systems. We humans have 2 kidneys, extra spare parts, and extra capacity, and many things. Say lungs, neural systems, arterial apparatus. While human design tends to be spare and inversely redundant, so to speak, we have a historical track record of engaging in debt, which is the opposite of redundancy. 50,000 in extra cash in the bank, or better, under the mattress, is redundancy. Owing the bank an equivalent amount, that is, debt, is the opposite of redundancy. Maybe you ask yourself now, well, it sounds really good, all this redundancy, but when we have too much of extra spare parts, that drives down the efficiency of a system, for example. And yes, this is true. When we are having more extra spare parts, when we inject more redundancy, our system gets probably more inefficient. But consider the following. Redundancy is ambiguous because it seems like a waste if nothing unusual happens, except that something unusual happens usually. Further, redundancy is not necessarily fuzzy. It can be extremely aggressive. For instance, if you have an extra inventory of, say, fertilizers in the warehouse, just to be safe, and there happens to be a shortage because of disruption in China, you can sell the excess inventory at a huge premium. Or if you have extra oil reserves, you may sell them at a large profit during a squeeze. So redundancy can be valuable, even if it looks on the first sight wasteful. Here we can point out 2 types of redundancies. Type 1 is a defensive type of redundancy in order to be robust to shocks. Type 2 is a more aggressive type of redundancy in order to be antifragile to profit from shocks. We have cash under the mattress and a financial crisis happens. Type 1. We use it defensively. Maybe we are laid off, so we have money to live from. Type 2. We use it aggressively, so to speak, to invest in crashing stocks to profit from them. This both we can only do because we had savings as a form of redundancies in the first place. Now, how we can plan or prepare for a worst case scenario, like a financial crisis. Many of us are familiar with the worst case scenario, which means that we look at the past and look there at the worst case, what happened in the past, or we try to anticipate the worst case. A famous example is the Fukushima power plant catastrophe in 2011 in Japan. There was an earthquake followed by a strong tsunami, which totally or nearly totally destroyed the Fukushima power plant or atomic power plant in Japan. Now, people built this atomic power plant thinking of the worst case scenario, what they had observed in the past, or like they observed in the past the strongest earthquake, and they thought we will build the power plant up to this point. Now, what happened with the earthquake, with the tsunami, was much stronger than the worst case scenario, what they anticipated, and that therefore everything nearly got destroyed. To take one example, risk management professionals look in the past for information on the so-called worst case scenario and use it to estimate future risk. This method is called stress testing. They take the worst historical recession, the worst war, the worst historical move in interest rates, or the worst point in unemployment as an exact estimate for the worst future outcome. But they never notice the following inconsistency. The so-called worst case event, when it happened, exceeded the worst case at the time. I have called this mental defect the Lucretius problem, after the Latin poetic philosopher who wrote that the fool believes that the tallest mountain in the world will be equal to the tallest one he has observed. We consider the biggest object of any kind that we have seen in our lives or hear about as the largest item that can possibly exist. We can use this for our own lives. We can look at the worst case scenario or the anticipated worst case scenario, and on top of that, we think even more of a worst case scenario. So we inject redundancies. Let's say we inject a 20% buffer because it is the worst case scenario. And on top of that, we inject again a 20% more buffer, so 40% overall buffer, to really be safe in an even worse case scenario. Of course, in the end, we can't totally anticipate a scenario because it is by definition unexpected and it's by definition surprising. So we can't really plan to the end of it. But what we can do is we can have so much buffer that we are in many situations just flexible to react with an extra layer or many extra layers of redundancy. If humans fight the last war, nature fights the next one. Your body is more imaginative about the future than you are. Consider how people train in weightlifting. The body overshoots in response to exposures and overprepares, up to the point of biological limits, of course. This is how bodies get stronger. Let's have a look at the trade-offs between redundancies and efficiencies. So travel cost is fragile. To the volatility of the number of cars on the highway, it does not depend so much on the average number. Every additional car increases travel time more than the previous one. This is a hint to a central problem of the world today, that of the misunderstanding of nonlinear response by those involved in creating efficiencies and optimization of systems. To better understand this quote, let's visualize it in an example. Imagine a highway with a capacity of 100 cars per hour for optimal flow. So the system is designed for 100 cars on average per hour. Let's look at how travel time changes as we add cars. So what we can see here, under 100 cars per hour, the travel time is the same, each 60 minutes. But what we also can see, the more cars we get, 110 cars, 120 cars, 130 cars, 140 cars, the travel time increases drastically. And now here are Nassim's words, every additional car increases travel time more than the previous one. Now consider a second system, the redundant system, where we inject redundancy and we optimize it for 120 cars per hour. Let's say, for example, the highway has an extra line. Now what we can observe here is that under 120 cars, all cars have the same travel time. And 130 cars and 140 cars, so over 120 cars, the travel time also increases, but not so drastically as in the original system. Now we can argue that we can make everything bigger. We can just inject everywhere redundancy because the travel time is for many more cars the same. And when we increase the number of cars over this average, what we optimized for, so 130 and 140 cars, it's still not so fast growing as in our original system. So it looks really good. But what we now should not forget is the efficiency, because when we look at the efficiency data, it looks all a little bit different. So I use the following efficiency formula. Let's add the numbers. When we compare those two systems, what we can see here now is that the original system is much more efficient at lower loads and also at mid-range efficiency, or like in the middle area. Where it now gets interesting is when we look in the high load efficiency, the redundant system maintains higher efficiency as it approaches and exceeds the original system's capacity. And also the redundant system is more efficient in handling overloads. The point is, when we design for averages, we can see the danger because some slight volatility or fluctuation traffic, that would be in our case over 100 cars, can break, so to speak, the system. How Nassim Taleb said it, every additional car increases travel time more than the previous one. And this we can extremely good see in the original system, where the travel time increases so much by just 10 cars more or 20 cars more, and it's going out of order. Knowing all of this now, how can it look like to inject redundancy into our personal or our professional lives? Avoid optimization. Learn to love redundancy. Redundancy, in terms of having savings and cash under the mattress, is the opposite of debt. Psychologists tell us that getting rich does not bring happiness if you spend your savings. But if you hide them under the mattress, you are less vulnerable to a black swan. Over-specialization also is not a great idea. Consider what can happen to you if your job disappears completely. Someone who is a Wall Street analyst of the forecasting kind, moonlighting as a belly dancer, will do a lot better in a financial crisis than someone who is just an analyst. As we could see in the traffic example from before, to inject redundancies into a system can lead to the system to be less efficient. But on the other side, when we inject redundancies, our system gets more robust to shocks. And not only that, it can even possibly be antifragile, to use our extra parts or our spare parts to a positive use or more in an aggressive way, right? To use our cash in a stock market crash for buying companies which are undervalued in order to profit in the long term from them. And when we don't have those redundancies, those extra cash in the first place, we can't profit from those opportunities at all. I think we all want to survive and we all want to avoid ruin, and for this redundancies can help us a lot. Because first and foremost, it's all about survival. While on the other side, over-optimization helps us, of course, in good times to make everything efficient, maybe to make more money or to be more productive or something like that. But the good times are not going on forever. Sometimes we are lucky and they are going on forever, and an over-optimized system can work until the end really well, let's say. But there can always be the day when nothing works anymore. So we have to be always careful, I would say, with over-optimization. Now, it would be really interesting for me to know, do you use redundancies in your life, consciously or unconsciously? If you use them, or if you have some ideas where you want to use redundancies, please let it know me in the comments. It would be really interesting to discuss with you your redundancies, or also when you have some feedback for this video, please let me know in the comments. And as you probably noticed, I use nearly all the time Nassim Taleb's quotes from his 2 books, Antifragile and the Black Swan. And I can really recommend you to read his whole Inserto series. Wait, I will really fast get it. The Inserto series by Nassim Taleb consists of 5 books. Here now you only see 4 because 1 book here is missing. And they contain so much practical wisdom for our professional and our personal lives that I can only really recommend everyone to read Nassim Taleb's books. And when you want to know more about mental models in general, or want to know more ways of thinking about in practical ways, please feel free to check out this playlist. As always, I hope that you could get some value out of this video, and I thank you so much for your time for watching, and as always, I wish you a fantastic day.